Hey, Greg here.
And I'm Brianna, and we're local realtors and huge supporters of the incredible Port Coquitlam community.
And if you've been watching the news, you may remember that Hazel Trembath Elementary tragically burnt down October of 2023. It was a huge loss for our community and affected hundreds of families.
But last month, it was officially announced that Hazel Trembath is being rebuilt, and we're here today with the man who made it happen, the mayor of Port Coquitlam, Brad West.
Brad, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today. We know that this is a big project in the community. So we wanted to talk about right after the fire, there's a lot of uncertainty about what would happen next. Can you walk us through those early conversations and what it looked like to get the rebuild on everyone's radar?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me to have this discussion, a really important one for our community. I can still remember the day I got the phone call from the fire chief that Hazel Trembath was on fire, and that was a really, really difficult day. It was interesting for me looking back now, wearing a number of different hats when that happened. One, obviously, as the mayor, and hearing from the fire chief that there was a very significant fire in the community, and it was going to impact a lot of people. Two, I went to Hazel Trembath, and still live in the neighborhood and have a real emotional connection to the school. And then third, my son was attending Hazel Trembath when it happened. So, a real range of emotions. In the immediate aftermath, we heard a lot of positive things from everyone who's involved in the administration of the education system and of the school. So provincial government, came out within a couple days and said, we're going to rebuild the school, and it's going to happen very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
School district said, we're committed to rebuilding the school. We're going to do it really quickly. So the signs were really positive. And I know everyone's focus at that time was, okay, how can we keep the students together? How can we support them? How can we support all the teachers and the staff? So, for a while there, I think there was just a real focus on making sure everyone's needs were immediately taken care of. And we had heard positive things about the school being rebuilt. So it was almost secondary to, okay, let's make sure we have a plan for our kids and all the staff. But as the days turned into weeks and then the weeks turned into months, people started to wonder, okay, what is going to be the plan for Hazel? And that's when, the frustration kind of set in, because there was an extended period of time where, we really weren't hearing a lot from the provincial government, the Ministry of Education, or the school district.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a great lead into my next question. So what were some of the obstacles that began to arise the further that time went on during the process?
Yeah, I think the major obstacle was just the bureaucracy of government. I had many, many interactions with provincial officials and the school district. And on an issue like a school being rebuilt, there are overlapping responsibilities. So you have the school district, which is, immediately responsible for education system in our area. But they answer to the provincial government, they answer to the Ministry of Education. That's where all their funding comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And so both organizations have a role in this. And anytime you get a situation where there's more than one person responsible, there starts to be a bit of finger pointing. So as I was trying to figure this out, I would hear from the province that they hadn't heard from the school district. I had heard from the school district that they hadn't heard from the province. And, and it took quite a bit of effort to try and get people on the same page. The other thing that became really apparent, and to this day is still incredibly disappointing to me, is that the provincial government, even though they said the right things in the immediate aftermath of the fire, they were treating this like you would a brand new school,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they weren't thinking about it through the lens of, there was a school here, it had hundreds of kids in it. They were treating it as like, okay, we're having to build a brand new school somewhere where there was never a school before. And so they made the school district do a whole bunch of things that I think were unnecessary and caused delays. But again, I think it was a situation where you have a bureaucracy that is used to doing things in a certain way and order, and they weren't able to adapt to a situation like we experienced. And that was hard and really frustrating. And I had some pretty difficult conversations with officials in Victoria because at the end of the day, the people who were suffering because of that was our kids here in Poco.
Yeah, sounds like you played a huge role in trying to bridge communication between these parties. So now that there's been the announcement that the school will be rebuilt, what are some of the things we can look forward to in the new school?
Well, I'm really pleased that we were able to get the positive announcement. You know, and that in of itself was interesting because I was keeping a close eye on the provincial budget, and that's where they have a very detailed list of here's the projects we're going to do, here's the money that we're setting aside to do them. And up until the budget, I was in frequent communication with the province, and I kept being told, don't worry, it's coming. And, you know, I'm a patient person. My wife and kids may disagree, but I'm a patient person to a degree. But my patience was really tested by this, you know, kept hearing the same thing over and over again. So provincial budget comes out, I'm poring over it with a fine-tooth comb, and the words Hazel Trembath don't appear in the provincial budget anywhere. And at that point, I used one of the tools that I had in my back pocket. It's a little bit complicated, but essentially the city acts as a tax collector for the provincial government. When people pay their property tax, there's a whole bunch of things on that bill that have nothing to do with the city. The money doesn't go to the city, but the city is responsible for collecting that money. And one of the items is the school tax. And so everyone pays a school tax through your property taxes, we collect it, and then it goes to Victoria. And when Hazel Trembath was not included in the budget, what I said publicly, and I think got a fair bit of attention in Victoria, is that if the provincial government is going to fail this community, I'm not interested in having the city collect the school tax on their behalf, which would have caused a real big headache for them. And lo and behold, it was about 24 hours after that, I think even less, that they said, "Oh, we're rebuilding it. The money is going to be there."
Yeah.
So, you know, I was really pleased when we got that announcement. But even to this point, I'm still very committed to make sure that there's follow through. You know, so I do want to see the specifics. A lot of the specifics haven't been made available to me. They wouldn't necessarily be provided to me because myself as the mayor of the city, we're not part of this. We don't have a role in terms of the construction, building of it. We'll have a role in some of the permitting, and the city is going to make sure that that's expedited and done very quickly. But I haven't seen the actual layout of the details of the size of the school, you know, the type of school, you know, what it's going to look like, the building type, because a lot of schools now are being done prefab. So I haven't seen some of those details, and that's very high on my priority list right now, is to make sure that we're holding the provincial government accountable and that they're going to follow through on their announcement. So as those details become available, I'll be making sure that I'm paying close attention to them, sharing them with the public. What I want and what I expect is that we get a beautiful school here at the site of Hazel Trembath that can serve the community not only right now, but for generations to come. And you know, I think in general, that's something that they need to be thinking about when they're building schools. So often schools get built and the first day they open, they're at capacity because the provincial government isn't building to anticipate future needs. They build just at this moment in time. So I hope that they're thinking about our community in the long term. Port Coquitlam's a growing community. It's a community that increasingly families are moving to from other parts of the Lower Mainland. And so I think all those things need to be held in account. And I also want to make sure that we have great amenities around the school as well, for the kids, because a school is way more than just a building. It is a community gathering place. It's a hub, and one of my kind of long-standing interests is trying to have more school utilization outside of school hours, so we can get community groups and activities and sports and all sorts of different things happening in our schools. And so I hope all of those things are in mind as they design and construct the school.
Awesome, Brad. Well, you've been known for being a fierce advocate for POCO and always putting the community first. What was your approach in making sure this rebuild became a priority?
I guess being a little bit like a dog with a bone. You really have to keep at these things. I think the system in the bureaucracy often counts on people doing one thing and then going away and
Totally.
forgetting about it. So it wasn't enough just to send one letter or have one meeting. I was a frequent flyer, so letting those officials, in Victoria, they're obviously they're not here in POCO. To them, it's just another building.
Yeah.
So really being persistent, I think, was the key piece of this. And as I mentioned, having different tools in my toolbox that I could use as required. And so when I did feel like I had to escalate the back and forth that was going on, I wasn't afraid to do so. Sometimes that meant being very public in the media. Sometimes that meant looking at the legislative tools the city has, like as I mentioned around the property tax collection. The other piece I think was really important was amplifying the voices of parents and students. So there was a Herculean effort here from the community, very much a grassroots effort. The PAC, all the kids, the staff, there were rallies, there were letter writing campaigns, all these different things. So they all kind of came together, and I think produced the required pressure to have the provincial government finally move and make the announcement.
Yeah, so many pieces. That's awesome. Perfect. And there's a lot that happens behind the scenes in projects like this. Can you share a moment where you really had to push to make sure Hazel Trembath got the green light?
I really think it would have to be that moment I was describing with the budget. You have to kind of put yourself in this time where you've been told, for several months that, don't worry, things are coming. We're working on it. Now, there's no real evidence of that. You're just being told, hey, don't worry, everything's happening. But I saw no forward momentum. And so the provincial budget, to me, that was a key moment in time, because it really reveals what the provincial government's plans are, right? They have to produce a level of detail that's very significant. So they have to have all of the projects that they intend to complete over a period of time. They have to have all of the funding in place that is attached to those projects. And there were a number of schools. I poured over the list, and school after school after school, but no Hazel Trembath.
Yeah.
And that to me was a real disappointment. But I quickly pivoted from disappointment to okay, we're at a make or break point, and what is the extra push that's going to be required to get the attention that we need? And I really do think, not in its entirety, but I guess I'll describe it as the threat of saying the city will not collect the school tax on the province's behalf. I think that got their attention, because it'd be an absolute nightmare for them to administer. You think about how many properties there are in Port Coquitlam. There are tens of thousands of properties paying millions of dollars in total towards the provincial government and their revenue for schools. And if we didn't collect it on their behalf and remit it to them, they were going to have to figure out some way to come and get it themselves. And that would have been a real challenge. And I think maybe, again, when you're dealing with bureaucracies and systems that are, basically going through a checklist and doing things the way they always do. I do think there was a moment there where they thought, okay, well, we better figure this out. And maybe we went from kind of the middle of the pack to the
Yeah.
top.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. Awesome. Well, now that the rebuild is officially happening, what's the timeline looking, and when can students and families expect to see the doors open?
Well, you know what? I'm very eager to hear that detail myself.
Yeah.
It's not something that they've shared publicly yet. I have been told that there have been RFPs already issued for the project, not in terms of the construction, but some of the other works that need to happen that are associated with the construction project. So that's an initial positive sign that, you know, there are things happening.
Yep.
There's money that's being spent, and we're on a trajectory for the project to proceed. So that I'm really pleased to hear. Traditionally, you're looking at, you know, probably a 2-3 year construction window. And what I have heard though is that there is an interest in perhaps a prefabricated option. The province has recently completed a school that did use that model of construction. Apparently it's been very well received. One of the advantages is that it can be completed much more quickly. So I'm kind of in the same boat as everyone else right
Yeah.
now. I'm waiting, I'm eager to hear. It can't come soon enough. People have had to wait too long. I regret that we had to waste as much time as we did. I mean, if I had had my way, we'd already be under construction a long time ago. But we are where we are, and you know, we persevered, and the community really supported each other. And I think at the end of the day, that's an important lesson for our kids. You know, there is always going to be tragedy in life. There will be setbacks. There will be things that happen that you never expected. And you can't always control that, but you can control how you respond. And in this case, our community responded by supporting each other, rallying together, and really persevering and being committed to seeing an outcome. And we're going to get that. And so I think the silver lining is that, you know, that's a powerful lesson for our kids to learn. You know, I'm sorry that we had to go through all of this, but you know, I think at the end of the day, we're going to get a positive outcome for Port Coquitlam.
Totally. Awesome. Well, it's so amazing to hear all the behind the scenes. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And to everyone watching, this is why community leadership matters. A huge thank you to Brad and everyone involved in bringing Hazel Trembath back to life.
We can't wait to see the doors open of the new school. If you're as excited as we are, drop a comment below and let us know what this means to you.
And as always, if you ever have any questions about Port Coquitlam or real estate, we're always here to help. See you next time.